What is an inline clip for Nerf blasters? How does it work? And how do you build one? Hello friends, hello YouTube, how are you guys doing? Rainbow here from Rainbow Mods and Props, and today is all about inline clips. You might have seen these already. I have recently built a couple of these BigShock pistol mods that use a so-called inline clip to fire Nerf darts. And a lot of people have been asking me questions about how does it work, how do you load, how do you shoot it, how do you build one, and this video is to answer all of that. So I thought it would be cool if I'm going to show you how exactly this works and how you build an inline clip mod with the exact same example that I used for this. So we're going to be building BigShock inline clip pistols. So first off, I will explain to you, to the best of my knowledge, how exactly an inline clip works. And again, I don't know everything. So if anyone has any additions to what I'm about to say, just leave them in the comments so you know that I can learn stuff from your knowledge as well. But for me, these things work, and I will share with you how I think they work and how I built them so you can understand it and build your own. Then I will go over everything that's on the table. I'll let you know what kind of materials you need to build an inline clip and also what kind of tools you need, or at least the tools that I use to build an inline clip. And then we're going to build two inline clip BigShock pistols similar to these two. Even going to use the same 3D printed barrel. I got it off Thingiverse, links in the description. So if you want to work with that, you can do the same thing. And other than that, this video is going to be a little bit longer, so grab yourself something to drink and enjoy. Before we start the video, I wanted to give a quick shout out to my friend Krine from Blastertime, because he supplied all the brass that we're using in this video to build the inline clip mods. So thank you, Krine, for supplying this and for sponsoring this video. And if you guys don't know Blastertime, check it out, links in the description, blastertime.eu, a great shop for blasters and modding supplies and, you know, overall anything you kind of want for the Nerf hobby, and even more than that. It's got aero tag as well, which is fantastic. So thanks again, Krine, and you guys go and check out his shop. So what is an inline clip and how does it work? Essentially, you got to think of an inline clip system as a setup for a blaster where multiple darts, could be elite darts, could be short darts, are stored within the barrel tube. And then when you prime a blaster and shoot it, only the first dart will be released and the other ones will be stopped. And then you can prime and shoot again. But how does it work? So for your understanding, you would have a barrel of sorts. Whatever material, doesn't matter for now. You have multiple darts in here, all right? Let's have this 3 darts. There's a dart heads up the front, okay? Like this. And then the moment air pressure comes in from the back, it will only push the dart in the very front out of the blaster. Because within this barrel, there is a second barrel or some sort of narrow gap just in the front. So it would be just here, right? Gonna make this just there. So as you can see, when the air will come in from the back, it can travel around these darts, okay, because there's enough space between the dart and the barrel, but it can't travel any further because here, right here, this is where it is blocked. So it will then push on this dart, and this dart itself will go out that way. But with this dart flying out there, all the air pressure will go out, and so only this dart will be shot and these darts won't. So what you then have to do normally, you would kind of just tilt this system that way. So these 2 darts will slide down, so the second dart here will then become the first dart and block the system in between here. All right? And that's essentially how it works. Like, it literally is just that the back of the barrel is just a little bit wider, so the air can travel around the darts and only pushes onto the front one. Now, there is many different ways of how you can build this. In our case, we're going to be using brass, and the idea is to have one barrel, just like so, and have a piece of a smaller barrel just in the front. And you don't really need much of this, so I'm only going to be using about 3 centimeters or so, like an inch or something, and that will be enough. And then this smaller piece of barrel will be a KS140, and the back piece will be a 141. So these fit into each other quite nicely, and it's actually airtight. And this has a solid dart fit, and this has a very loose dart fit. So that's essentially how the inline clip works. And now there's several ways of how you can load an inline clip. In the pistol that we are going to be building, you have to load the inline clip. Just draw it again. This is our inline clip. The one that we'll be building, you have to load it from the front. So you'd be putting the darts in from this side because that side will be closed. But there, you can also build an inline clip that you kind of reload and then sort of push this back into the plunger so it's closed. So that's also an option. But with the BigShock as it is, we're going to be building it so the back of the plunger is sealed and airtight, so you have to load it from the front. And the only thing you got to remember is how long you make your inline clip system, so you know how many darts you can put in there. So what we'd be doing is a system about that long, so it will hold 2 elite darts or 4 Stefan darts. You could go longer, so with the Silence of Arm build, that one right there, I went full length of the brass, so I can fit in 6 to 7 Stefan darts or 3 elite darts. One thing that you have to understand in terms of performance, an inline clip system is not consistent in terms of performance, because when there is a number of darts in this barrel and the air has to sort of go around, there is no straight airflow pushing onto that one dart. So you're going to be losing some power, okay? And the less dart actually in the barrel, the higher the power will be. So with this setup like this, with a BigShock stock spring, you would kind of expect the first dart of the 3 to be roughly at around, let's say, 70 FPS, okay? There's the second dart, because the moment that will be shot, there's only 2 darts left in the barrel, so the second one will be somewhere around 80, okay? And the last one being technically a single shot with no darts behind him whatsoever, so the full air actually hits on it, will roughly be around 90 FPS. That's with the stock spring and the BigShock, and really depends if your system is tight or, you know, if you have an air leakage somewhere. But that's something that you have to understand. So if you want to build this for performance, you would have to work on spring upgrades and a couple of other things. But if you just do it like this, that's what you're going to get. What do we need for this mod? We need a BigShock, and if you've never opened a BigShock, this is what it looks like. We don't need to do any shell modification really. We, just need to modify this piece. We need brass, and in our case, thanks again Blaster Time for sponsoring the brass. We need KS141 and KS140. And to avoid confusion, even though this was manufactured in the States, over here we call this size brass KS141 because the number is 8141, okay? But that actually is a 9/16, and then the 140 is the 732. So I don't know why we in Europe call it KS140 and KS141, and you guys in America call it 1732 or 9/16. I don't know. But basically, just to avoid the confusion, KS141 is 9/16 and KS140 is 1732. So we need a longer barrel of the KS141, which is why I got 2 of those, right? Building 2 of these blasters. And we need a small portion of the KS140. Then what do you need? Some proper pipe cutting tools. These are really, really handy if you work with brass, because whenever you try to use a Dremel on this or just a metal saw, you're never going to get as straight of a cut as you get with these tools. They are quite easy. You just put the pipe here, you twist that tight, and you rotate that around several times and it'll come undone. What I have here is essentially the same thing, but I've swapped the cutting blade with just a metal washer. And the reason I have this is so I can just make a line here that will sort of shrink and narrow just a little part there. And I'll talk about that when we get to it. But this is essentially how I made it. I used a different pipe cutting tool. I took out the cutting part of it and just replaced it
with a just standard washer that kind of fit in there. This tool, I forgot the name of what it is called, but basically, you know, to get rid of the sharp edges of the metal after you cut it. I've heard several people saying that this is the wrong tool and you shouldn't use it, and I mostly use files as well, but you can use that. Speaking of files, they're over here. You need two. Well, I'm using two. I'm using that small one and the bigger one for working on the 3D printed parts as well as the brass. Now, if you want to do the same thing with the 3D printed parts, links to these are on Thingiverse. What you need to know is that this is a little bit tight. So if you print this with the original setup that it's set to, this hole here will be too tight for the KS141, which is why I have a big file, and you just sort of file it out from the inside until it fits. Also, this circle here, as well as the lines here, so they are meant to go, this is meant to go right on there and sit on there like so. But as you can see, it doesn't quite fit. It is just a little bit, about 0.5 millimeter too small. The entire piece actually fits quite well to the shell, so don't upsize the entire piece. Well, you could try, I guess. I don't have a 3D printing software and don't have a printer, so I got these printed, and now I'm going to work the other way. I'm going to use a Dremel on a file to make enough room and space so that fits onto here. I'm going to do this off camera, but just so you're aware of that. What else do we need? We need some sort of tape. In the event that you build an inline clip where you want to be able to remove the barrel and put it back in and still want to have a proper seal, I would recommend cloth tape. But because with this one we are taping it together, I'm just going to use a cheap as knockoff whatever tape, because this is not going to seal anything. This is just holding the brass in place, and I'm going to seal it using glue, in this case 2K epoxy. I'm also going to, you know, glue it in there so it's solid in there later on. So that's all. The next thing that we need some form of glue that will A, hold it in place, and B, make it airtight. And I find that this 2K epoxy stuff works really, really nicely. Hot glue could work, but it's a bit of a mess to get it in there, and you'll see when we get there. But yeah, all of these could work. It just needs to be airtight, and I found this stuff just sort of runs into all the nooks and crannies, and then it's just yeah, dries out fantastic. What are these? These are also from Thingiverse. I think they were coins for, like, you know, I think Looping Louie, yeah. And they're just resized in the sense that they're made bigger and wider, and they will close the plunger tube back here. So if you don't have these, if you don't have a 3D printer, you can still do this. All you will then need to do is find a way to close this with some plastic, some epoxy. You'll see in a second. But this is what they are for. So, you know, two of those go on here and on here. And other than that, yes, you will need a Dremel, and you will need some sort of shell cutting tool. You definitely need a hammer. I forgot that. All right, so the first thing we have to do, take the blasters apart. As I said, we don't need to do any modification to the shell, so we only need these two. I have sanded down a little bit of this and a little bit of this so that these now fit nice and snug. Don't, like, if you Dremel these out, don't go too far, because that's actually how they fit. They're meant to friction fit, so you still need some force to take this on and off, but it actually fits quite nicely. What we want to do is we want to take the back of this out, and we're going to take the AR out. That's the main objective. So this in here, I don't know if you can see, right there. Yeah. I'm going to take this out, and the way to do is I just, yeah, take a Dremel and cut away this with the line of that part right here. So this entire rectangular sort of shaped plastic is going to be gone, as well as this. So this is a round opening, because then that little coin can just be glued into there like so. So I'm going to do this off camera. I guess you don't need to see me taking a Dremel to this. If you don't have a Dremel, I guess you could use some sort of saw to cut down here, but you don't want to cut away anything of the round bit here, you just want to get rid of this. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly do this off camera. And remember, when you work with a Dremel, safety. When you've cut open the BigShock plungers, they should look something like this. So this spring here is the air restrictor spring. That'll come right out. And then this bit here, the grey bit, is the air restrictor. And that has to come out. So what you want to do, like all these pins, you want to get rid of all those pins. So I'm going to take a Dremel. You could also do this with a file, but it's going to take a lot longer. And then Dremel away all this till I have a nice and round, smooth surface where this coin can just fit in. Before that, you want to get out the air restrictor. So what you want to do to get this out is take a pipe of sorts, put it in there, and then take your hammer and put a couple of tabs onto the back here. So it helps if you put this on the table, and I'm going to do this off camera. Right, so now you see the air restrictor in there is loose, sort of wobbles about. But for it to come out, you have to get rid of these pins in the back here. So I'm now going to take the Dremel to both of these. All right, here we go. Now both of those are cleaned out, and so that these bits will fit just right. So just a little bit of force required, but we're going to epoxy them in place anyways. But before we do this, we have to do the brass. And you might be wondering why there is an X on this one and there is not on this one. It's because with this one here, I have a updated spring in here as a K25. It's also the reason why I'm building two, because I want to answer the performance drop at the same time that we're doing this. All right, one thing that you also have noticed, I'm building these with the plunger inside. When you Dremel around here, you will get some odd plastic just falling into here and rest on top of the plunger head. So I highly advise you to, when you're done with the build, take this out, clean it, re-lube it, and put it back together. But that's something I'm going to do anyways, so I didn't even think of that. All right, so brass, what are we doing now? This is the KS141. And I've already prepared little bits of the KS140, which will go inside the KS141. But before we do that, let's figure out the length that we're going to use for this one. So if you don't use these pieces, if you build your own blaster, you can decide the barrel length, the length of the inline clip, depending on the size of your build or the numbers of darts that you want to have in there. So for instance, with the Silence of Arm build, I used full length because I wanted as much as I could get, 6-7 darts, short darts that is. But with this one, we are limited with this build because what I don't like brass sticking out the front of the blaster. You could totally do that. It'll be absolutely fine. I just don't like it. So I want to have the brass not longer than this. And as you can see, that will be too long. All right. So that kind of limits us on the one side, and also the plunger system limits us on the other side. Because how far do you want this to be in here? As I said, with this build, it's nice and simple. It's going to be glued into there, and then it's going to be sealed and everything. If you want to be able to pull this back out, for whatever reason you need to, I said use cloth tape around here or electrical tape, build up, and try to fit it in here until at this very spot right there, it'll just be sealed. But for what we're going to be doing, it's going to be glued in there, so just using crappy tape and then just glue the rest. But where to? So how this works is the air pushes up through this bit here, up here, and then goes that way. So the piece of brass wants to be about here, so just about there, because if you put it any further right now, the air can't travel straight up and into the brass. It kind of has to go this way and then that way. And if I was to put it in all the way, like I could even seal it on the other end, as I was to put it here, the air kind of doesn't go straight. It kind of has to go up and that way. So what I do is I put it right here to make sure the air can just travel up and then that way. And yes, technically you'd be creating this much of a dead space over here, but I don't really care. It's like these things are 4mm, they're going to sit in here, so you can see how little the dead space actually is. And for my use, the performance with up to 95 FPS out of this blaster is absolutely fine, so I don't need to worry about that. But if you were to worry about it, all you got to do is find a way of hot glue and just sort of put some hot glue up here so you fill this a little bit. All right. As I said earlier, this is 141. I have prepared 2 pieces of KS 140, and the longer one will be in the one with the upgraded spring, and the other one will be in the one with the stock spring. So now I'm going to put this in here, and you can see it's a tight fit, and just to about where I want it to end. So just about there. So that's the maximum length that I can have without it sticking out the front. And then you can see, all right, if I was to put this on right now, this is what we're looking at. And I cannot mark it right here, which is why I will have this sit about here, because I'll know that this is as far as that goes into there. And then I'm going to mark myself a line roughly eyeballing it about there. Okay, so that should be fine. So with this on like so, yeah, that's perfect. That'll sit right about here, which is great. So now I have to get this back out and have to cut it. If you have never used a pipe cutter before, I'm going to show you once how you do this and explain how this works. So essentially, you can upper and lower that cutting blade, and it's not a cutter like you normally think. It's rotating around the piece. So you put the piece of brass here, and you tighten this, and now you want to make sure that this cutting blade, the center is on the center of your line right there. And don't tighten it too tight for the start. You just want to see where you are. Now, as you can see, it holds itself. You can just rotate this around there, and then you will see the line forming right there. And in my experience, you could do it this way, but it works better if you hold this and turn this. And now, the more you tighten, okay, the more pressure you're going to put onto this. And obviously you have to tighten it while you're turning, but I found that when you tighten it too quickly, like tighten it too much too quickly, you end up bending this a lot more than you need to, which will result in you having to file out a lot more of material, because you know you don't have a straight cut. You kind of have all the edges bent inwards, and then you have to file them out again. So what I recommend doing is, like with the first, you have to do several rounds, like plenty, until you feel it really loose, and then give it a little bit more of a tighten, and then give it a more of a tighten, and do more of those. And again, and more rounds, and again, a little bit more, and more rounds. And eventually, you will hear it crack. One more. Nope. And one more. There we go. Did you hear that? That crack? So you're almost through. And there we go. Now be careful. These edges can be and probably are really sharp. So this is where you need your set of files, or whatever that tool was called. So essentially how this works, that bit here is for the outside, and then that bit here is for the inside. Okay. You could do it this way. I'm not a big fan of it anymore. I got it because I thought it was nice and easy and handy, but a friend of mine told me that this is for the wrong, that's the wrong material. That's for different kind of pipes. I don't know. And I found this to be a lot quicker and a lot easier. So basically just going around like so. Until it's really nice and smooth and you don't feel any resistance. Which is just about now. Another thing with the top that you can do, take a bit of sandpaper just like that. And here you go. And you can always test if that's enough of what's it called, filing, sanding. When you push a dart in, it should be nice and easy, and it shouldn't, because that's the 141, right? So remember, and it shouldn't feel like the material is ripping on the dart. So no scratching. This is just a little bit. While I'm doing this, as you can see, I'm rotating the pipe. Right? Okay. So yeah, perfect. With this, this can be a little rough. It doesn't need to be 100% perfect. If you make it perfect, yes, please make it perfect. With this, however, that needs to be perfectly smooth, because that's the narrow part that's going to sit in the front, and that's where you push your darts through when you load them, and that's also, whoops, where the darts will be fired through. So from both sides, this will have to work nice and smooth, which in this case it does, thankfully. So with the 140, you want to do a lot more sanding and filing, so it's actually nice and smooth. With the 141, in this case, at the end, it doesn't necessarily matter. All right, so now try and see if we've done this correctly. Put this back into where I wanted it to be, which was about there, and then put this into here, put this on like it will be, and now you can see we're just at that corner, just at that cut where I wanted to be early on. I can show it. Whoop, there we go. And this is also now where you need to sort of align, but be aware that this part will align itself with the shell. So if you want to make this, want to do this properly, you actually have to take this off a little bit, put this in, see how the shell sits right there as well. So you want to have that just sort of on there, and then put it so it's tight, and it's actually just what's the word I'm looking for? So it's just a smooth transition right here, and then you can see it should be in the middle, it should be centered. All right, so I went ahead and did all the sanding for all the parts, and now I've set this up how I want it to do. And you can see, so this is our 141, this is our 140, and this wants to be in the front here. All right, you don't want to put it all the way in the front, you know, just a little bit. If you have a bit of 141 that's longer than that, let's say like this, it will prevent fishtailing if you have too much of a spring upgrade behind the blaster, but if you have too much of it, it then creates barrel drag again as well. So you want to be, you know, you can play around with this, but for this particular mod, I found it best to have this about here. So as you can see, the length of 4 short darts still fits into the brass, and as you remember, we have the brass in about here. So even if this was to be sticking out a little bit, that'll be fine. And also, don't worry about the short dart dropping out in the end. If you have the brass till about here and that to about there, the short dart can't go all the way to drop out, because if it would, like if you cut this too short, you're risking the short dart just sort of falling into the back here, and then it's going to sit in there and you're not going to get it out. So be aware of that. Yeah, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mark this spot where I want this to go, and obviously I don't see how far in that goes, so I'm going to mark it in a different way. If you remember earlier, I told you I have this device, which used to be a cutting device, but I replaced a cutter with a plain washer. And so what you do is you use it the same way that you use the cutter, but you will just create a narrow spot. And sometimes, depending on what you're building, that could also be enough for the inline clip, but I found that adding this piece really, really helps. Let's set this down, start it about there. All right, so just on there is where I want it to be. Okay, so what this will do, create a line just around here. Okay, you don't want to cut with this. So bear in mind that you don't want to cut. You end up creating a narrow spot by pushing part of the brass inwards, sort of shrinking it down like just here. And yes, I've kind of moved a little bit, but that's not too bad. Whoops. Yeah. So I don't know if I can show this. Where's the camera? Can you see the little line in there, just where the light breaks? That's the line we created. This will now stop that being right there. So with this in there, the dart shouldn't drop through. It should be held in place by this. So if I put the dart in here, there you go. It's not particularly tight. It's not as tight as that, but it definitely is a good fit. Because if I would do it here, the dart will just drop through. If you're unsure about using this and sort of, tightening that spot here, bending it inwards without breaking it, I recommend you do this part before you cut down the 141 here, because if you end up breaking this, you could still do it again. It's just about there, and then cut the 142 length neat. Like with this, it leaves no room for error, because otherwise you need to swap the entire bit. But yeah, now we insert this, and because I can't push it any further than about here, I have a different piece of 140, and I couldn't for the love of me found the other piece where I cut this from. So just enter there and just push it down slightly till you feel the resistance, and now it's in there. And you can see this is now where the 140 sits. Have about a centimeter left, and so now I can front load my darts through here. It's a really tight dart fit, starts about right there, and then I push it through, and then it drops out. There we go. So that's our setup, and now this will also be in the front of the blaster right here, and then we're going to do the rest. So insert away, that's right there. Till about there, and now you can still adjust the positioning of the brass. I'm not gluing this in there because that's such a tight fit, so there's no need for that. As I said, if you now put this on here, it should be just about right there. That looks good. So again, just above the opening from the plunger is, I'm going to tape pieces of tape around here, and as I said, now when you want to be removing this constantly, you use cloth tape. I'm going to use a cheap tape because I'm going to add some of that glue on top to make sure that this is tight. And there's a couple of layers around there, and the reason for that is I want to create just some buildup so that when I put the glue in from here, it just doesn't run through all the way. So yeah, this is a trial and error. I cannot say how many wraps you've got to do. All right, this is about enough. I'd say it's probably 5 to 6 pieces that long. But yeah, it doesn't matter that much because all you want to do is create a build-up that when you put in some glue from the top, it won't run everywhere. The reason I put the shell back on is I now want to make sure that it will align perfectly here and it's still fine, and also that it is in the middle. And you can sort of see, yeah, there we go. It's a good alignment, it's right in the middle. And so what I'm doing now is taking this back out. I'm going to mix some of the 2K epoxy. I'm going to put this all the way around up the top here, and I'm going to shove this in there, and then I will, once that is in there as it should be, I will then remove the shell so that I don't get any glue onto the shell without moving this bit, and then I'll come around here from the top with this little spatula thing and fill the gap in here with 2K epoxy as well. This has a 5-minute working time before it starts curing, which should give me enough time to do that. key thing to this is, let me see if I can show this. So you want to have the epoxy all around the brass, but don't have it run into the plunger, okay? So be careful with that. And now this is about good. It's all the way around, completely sealing. Don't worry about the bubbles in there, they'll just dry out. And now I'll just have this sit over here and rest. The epoxy is cured, so that means we're now ready to move to the final step, which would be gluing this into place here, because once we've done that, the entire system is airtight and should be working. For now, what you want to do beforehand is open the plunger tube right here, get this out, and blow out all the dust that's still in there, because now is the last time that you can actually do this easy, because otherwise you will have to blow through here. I have tested if this fits earlier. I know that this design of the coin actually is the perfect size, so when I Dremel this out, that this will just go in there. But if I let go now, and it'll just sort of rest in there, it'll be gone. I have to sort of weirdly take it out. It happened to me before. So put a stick all the way through here to push it back out. So what I will do is I'm going to use the same 2K epoxy glue, and I'm going to apply it generously on the inside of this, and then I'm going to put this in with that side, and just till it's flush, or maybe even just a little bit lower than flush, and then I'm going to use the leftover epoxy and close off this, so you won't be able to tell that this is 3D printed. So with this you can apply generously. It doesn't matter if you spill too much. It's not going to run all the way down into the chamber, hopefully. It would have to be a lot of glue, but okay, maybe still not overdo it. All right, so that's that. And then it will be hard to drop this in when you cover this. This is why I'm doing it this way. And so now just make sure you put that in nice and straight. Requires a little bit of force, just about right there. Don't push it too much, because getting it out will be a hassle. All right, so this is now, I don't know if you can see, but just about, okay? So now I'm going to fill the top with the rest of the epoxy that I have here. And if you do this clean, there is no need for sanding afterwards. So pay a bit of attention to what you do. All right, due to the nature of epoxy glue now setting down there, this will be flat and smooth. I can show this to you right now. You can sort of see it in the light. And to guarantee that to happen, I'm going to set it down over here. Make sure it stands up straight. Come on, you come over here. Right, there we go. I think this one should be good to go. Still have enough epoxy right here. The reason why you want to pay attention to this is because that bit will be visible from the outside. I'm going to show this to you on the other blaster in a second. Made this mistake on the first one, not caring too much about it, but it is visible, which is why you want to make sure there is no gaps and that it all looks neat. Alright, sweet, that'll do it. So that's that one sealed as well. And now they're going to sit over there again for 20 minutes. Alright, so just to show you, this is the part that we were just working on right there. And you can see that in the finished build. And so as you can see here, I didn't do much sanding. It was just, I actually didn't do any sanding, I believe. Just, yeah, just close it nicely. And that's it. Alright, so the epoxy has cured and is solid now, and we're pretty much done. So that's how this is. So you can see it's nice and clean. I will give this a little bit of a sand before I'm going to paint it, but for now, let's just slap the shells on here looking quite neat. And then let's have 2 elite darts, 1 and 2. Just push it in a little bit further, right? So you prime, you shake to have the first dart in the front, and ouch, goes 1 dart. Ow. You prime, you give it a shake, that's fantastic, and ouch, there goes the second dart. 1 or 2 more things. Number 1, if you're thinking about a spring upgrade, you kind of want to upgrade your catch, and if you don't want to do this with rubber bands around it, because the catch essentially is just the trigger right there, this is another way of doing this, like jamming a rival ball just behind it here. This will require some shell work because you're going to be losing this screw post right there, but you can definitely do that, and that will make your catch a little stronger, but with it, it's still a beast. It's the upgraded spring one, right? Let's see if I can prime this, and I'm not going to shoot my hand because that'll hurt. Let's shoot something that I can't destroy, hopefully the wall. Holy crap. And again. And it's gone, disappeared into somewhere. Another thing that I want to do, that I will be doing to both of these, which is just a cosmetic and feel nature, is get rid of this grip. Like, this really is uncomfortable. So even with the full shell, this here really is uncomfortable. So I'm going to be dremeling this down till about there. All right. So all the way till you're flush with that grey, and it will still work. It'll do 2 things, by the way. For this one, with the stronger spring, when you hold this to prime, it'll actually assist the catch, and it'll just feel so much nicer. Alright everybody, here we are at the end of a rather long video. It's been a long day, but nevertheless I hope it was entertaining, and I hope it was educational and informative for you guys as well. I hope you now have a grasp on how inline clips work. If not, leave a comment, send me a message, and I'll try to do a better job explaining. Or, if there's something still that's unclear, we can work this out. And I hope it's a motivation for you guys to build your own inline clip system. It was a lot of fun building these 2, and they're not done yet, so this one will obviously get a proper paint job, and that one I'll need to do some more shell modding on this shell, as I said, for the ball to fit. And then there's going to be awesome pistols like these 2. Again, thanks to Blaster Time for sponsoring this episode. Links are in the description if you need to get some brass, or if you need to get other parts, or if you just want to check out the shop, it's all in the description. Make sure, to hop over there and keep a look and, order stuff. Buy stuff now. Go to Crane's website, buy things. Go to Crane's website, buy things. Go to Crane's website, buy things. Blaster Time. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was as informative as you wanted it to be. I hope this is all clear to you now, and yeah, it was lots of fun. Please make sure to check out my website, check out the videos on screen now, check out my social media, and while you're at it, leave a like and a sub on all the platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, because numbers mean the world. And if you wanted to, check out my Patreon and support my Patreon, would really mean the world to me. And other than that, I see you about. Happy modding, love and sunshine.